Hello friends, as you already know from watching my numerous videos or reading my articles, getting a residence permit in Montenegro is very simple, very cheap and accessible to every Russian citizen. Currently, the approval rate for residence permits is 100%. But an important question arises. How can you earn a living in this country? Many Russians, Ukrainians and citizens of other countries postpone or give up on immigration because they have this belief, these prejudices that they don't have enough money, they don't have the means. And in general, that immigration just isn't for them. Friends, I will now try to prove to you that all of this is complete nonsense and that anyone can emigrate to Montenegro and that everyone can create an income in this country. What opportunities are there to earn money in Montenegro? Well, basically, there are all sorts of opportunities. Let's start with the most basic option. You don't consider yourself a freelancer or a business person and you don't want to invent anything new. There are people like that, and there are quite a lot of them. That is, people who just work their whole lives and never dream of changing anything in their lives, or so to speak, catching a golden fish, increasing their income 5, 10 or 15 times. In that case, you can simply come to Montenegro for work. Some might say that this isn't very advantageous because salaries in Montenegro are low and it's hard to find a job there. Let's start with how easy it is to find a job in Montenegro. Yes, like in all countries, there is unemployment in Montenegro, but firstly, it is many times lower than in Russia. And on the Montenegrin coast, unemployment basically doesn't exist. In other words, the only people not working are those who don't want to. Even now, even after the crisis, there are still far more job opportunities than back home. Accordingly, anyone can find a job, and everyone who has looked for one has found one. Now, regarding salaries, yes, compared to Switzerland, Germany, the USA, or some other top countries, salaries in Montenegro are indeed very low. The model salary is just over 500, the average salary, which here is basically the same as the model salary, unlike in Russia, is just over 500 euros. So, compared to Switzerland, that's very little. But you're not seriously going to try to get a work visa for Switzerland, are you? I hope you all understand that the chances of that are very slim. If you compare salaries in Montenegro with those in Russia or say in Ukraine, the situation is different. It turns out that here salaries are not so low after all. The model salary in Montenegro is 2 or even 2.5 times higher than back home. I hope everyone understands that when I talk about working in Montenegro, I started with the least advantageous, the least profitable option for immigration, that is the simplest one for those who don't want to learn anything new, don't want to invent anything, but just want something modest yet reliable and guaranteed. So I'll go there, I'll earn little, but at least without any risk. That's it. There are foreign workers in Montenegro, and the number of foreign workers is astronomical. The entire economy of Montenegro relies on foreign workers. There aren't that many Russians, although they are present. I have clients who work in Montenegro, but the number of people coming from neighboring Bosnia, Serbia, and Albania is simply enormous. Now, let's talk about some more profitable, more interesting immigration options from a financial perspective. Freelancing. Freelancers, there is an astronomical number of them in Montenegro. Programmers, designers, web developers, and others, like 3D modelers. And even if you have never earned money freelancing before, I am sure that if you start learning programming, design, or something else that you personally have an aptitude for, then in 2 or 3 years, you will master this field and increase your income, well, let's say tenfold. Later, you can increase it even more. But at first, you'll be paid as a beginner programmer, so you'll increase your income tenfold. This amount of money is quite enough for a family to live in Montenegro. The next option, which is also often used by immigrants, is that people learn English. And I believe it's quite realistic to learn English to a fairly good level in a couple of years. If you study it every day for 2 hours instead of watching TV shows, I'm sure you'll make very significant progress. That's it. You learn English and get a remote job with Americans, the British, Canadians, or someone else. And you earn good money as well. For example, I have several clients who work in tech support for American employers. The salary ranges from 1.5 to 2,000 euros per month. Again, it's not a particularly high salary, relatively speaking. I mean, it's decent money to live in Montenegro, but not a lot. But in principle, you can definitely live in Montenegro on that amount. Want more? That's not a problem either. First of all, there's such a thing as career growth, and with American employers, it's real. Secondly, most immigrants are already adults, established people who come with their family. Accordingly, there's nothing stopping both spouses from working husband and wife. If each earns 1.5 to 2,000, that's already a very good income on which you can live really well. The next option, get some kind of qualification in your home country that will allow you to generate income quickly and easily. For example, hairdresser, manicurist, cosmetologist. Of course, the list can go on. You could mention auto repair services, but that's a bit more complicated. But becoming a hairdresser or a manicurist learning manicure, learning cosmetology is relatively easy. And these people are working, these people are swamped with orders. I have examples, for instance, of manicurists who arrived, say, just a month ago, and they're already working, already have clients. In other words, you can build up a client base in just a few months, just by advertising on Facebook, for example, and in a few months, you'll already be earning a decent income, enough to live on in Montenegro. The next option is to try starting a business in your home country, and if it's successful, move it to Montenegro. That's exactly what I did. To be honest, in my opinion, this is the most difficult and most risky of all the options I've just mentioned, and the results are by no means guaranteed, because starting a business in Russia is very challenging, and there are also certain risks involved when relocating it. I did this back in the day because you could say I grew up during the most disadvantageous time. The Soviet Union had just collapsed, and as a result, a lot of things were simply unavailable. For example, there was no opportunity to learn English. And even if you did learn it, it basically didn't help, because you couldn't get a job with a foreign employer since there was no internet. There was no reason to learn English, there were no textbooks, no materials, there was no internet, in a word. In other words, there was nothing at all. It was the same with programming. There was nowhere to learn it. Well, unless you got into some university for programming. There were no programming materials, and there were no computers. And even if you did learn it, again, there was no internet, no opportunity to get a job with some Americans for a good salary. So I had only one option: to start a business. That's exactly what I focused on, and it took me God knows how many years. And now, in the 21st year, I would never choose that option again. I would have started either learning English or learning programming, or better yet, both at the same time. But nevertheless, that's also one of the possible options you can pursue. So I've just told you about the main ways to emigrate, the ways most people move to Montenegro. No one is born already knowing English or freelancing or with an established business in Russia. Everyone builds all of this themselves. So tell me, who among you can't manage at least one of the options I've suggested? I think everyone is capable of it. Accordingly, the conclusion is very simple. Each of you, my friends, can emigrate. All it takes is the desire. And finally, there's one last thing worth discussing. Very often, I mentioned this before, and I say it again very often. You hear people say, I don't have the money to emigrate, I'm not wealthy. My friends, I wasn't wealthy either, and I emigrated. Honestly, I still don't consider myself particularly wealthy. That's right. Most immigrants who come to Montenegro have somewhere between 3 and 15,000 euros in their pocket. 3 to 15,000 euros, that's about the average price of a foreign car, and often not even a new one, but a used one. Just look at how many foreign cars are driving around you on the roads in Russia. Every owner of one of those cars could sell it and emigrate. At one time, that's exactly what I did. I sold my car and left for Montenegro. So, you see, for many people, it's not really about not having the money or the means, but rather there's this thought in their heads. If I sell my car now, and then something goes wrong with my immigration plans, I'll be left without a car. Do you see how it works? It's not that you don't have the money. The fact is, most of you actually do have enough money to emigrate. Roughly the same amount as most others who come here to live. It's just that those who made the move are more willing to take risks than you are. So it's not about a lack of opportunities, it's about a lack of desire, a different attitude toward risk. That's all I have to say.